Have you ever noticed that even on your journey of healing, you're doing the work to heal, but you're also simultaneously continuing to choose reinforcements of the original wound? Whether it is toxic dynamics in relationships or toxic media, whatever you consume in terms of media, maybe music that you used to listen to that reinforced, that represented the original wound. You're still listening to it. It's not good or bad or right or wrong, but just seeing it for what it is. Say, for instance, the original wound consisted of a lack of worth, a belief of a lack of worth, of boundarylessness. Maybe media that you learned to tune into as a result of that actually was a reinforcement of that. Whether it's movies, whether it's books, media, content, whatever the hell it is, it doesn't matter what it is. What matters is that it is a reinforcement of that. Say, for instance, somebody who was traumatized, and by the way, we were all traumatized. There's no person without trauma. Okay, but imagine when you were traumatized, you learned as a result of the original wound, or maybe multiple wounds, doesn't matter. You learned to tune into chaotic media, whether in the form of music, in the form of TV shows, movies, whatever it was. And then not only that, but also similar dynamics in relationships. You tuned into drama, gossip, triangulation, all of the chaotic dynamics of unhealthy relationships. And now you're healing, but you're also, whether a lot or a little, you're still choosing the same reinforcements in the forms of media, in the forms of relationship dynamics. You're still choosing the same thing. And for that, what I want to explore is repetition compulsion. The act of unknowingly, until you do become aware of it, unknowingly keeping the comfortable and familiar dynamics of the original wound alive. People that are not aware of repetition compulsion are absolutely keeping the comfortable and familiar dynamics of the original wound or the original wounds alive. And so the challenge here is actually to step outside of the comfortable and familiar, step outside of the known, step into the unknown, step outside of the comfortable and familiar role or roles that you learned to play based on the original wound or wounds. It is challenging to step away from the comfort and familiarity. It is challenging to step into worthiness, especially determined by the self and the self alone, when what you've learned to do your entire life is to tie your worth to the external. Imagine that. Imagine your entire life you've tied your worth to the external, to a person, to a thing, to a job, to a university. It doesn't matter what it is. You learn this belief that your worth is actually not intrinsic, that it has to do with someone or something out there. So you've tied it to different things and people out there. Imagine stepping into the unknown, the discomfort, the non-familiar, or unfamiliar, you could say, and to cut those ties of self-worth to the external and bring that power back to yourself. Imagine the different thoughts, the different beliefs that would arise as a result of that. Wait a second, I'm not allowed to do this. I was taught that my worth is somewhere out there in someone or something. Who the hell am I to cut those ties and to bring the power back to myself and for me to determine myself, despite what anybody else has to think about it? Yeah, there's going to be resistance. And I would argue that this resistance is kind of like a defense mechanism. It's a safety mechanism because the original ego state was marred and scathed by the original wound or wounds. And that has created a very specific structure of a narrative around all of its beliefs and ideas. Everything that it thinks, everything that it feels, and everything that it does is very much within the confines of the belief systems, the program of the original wound or wounds. How fascinating is that? So yeah, essentially, it doesn't feel safe to do things that are unknown because the repetition compulsion's drive is to keep things comfortable and familiar to the original wound or wounds. So who the hell do you think you are to try and go out and form healthier relationships? Who the hell do you think you are to stop consuming this media that has reinforced your lack of self-worth through decades? Who the hell do you think you are to untie, to cut these ties and these strings of worth to the external and bring all of that power back to yourself? That is the safety mechanism. That is the defense mechanism. And that is why people continue to choose reinforcements based on the original wound or wounds, because it feels safe. And we humans crave safety. This is a huge thing in psychology. We want to feel safe. We want to feel comfortable and familiar. So what do? We continue to go back to the unhealthy relationship or unhealthy relationships. We continue to indulge in drama and gossip and triangulation. We continue to overinvest with a lack of healthy boundaries into other people's lives. And then we get taken advantage of. We get used. Oh, because it feels comfortable and familiar. Oh, because that person just has a massive heart. No, they have a lack of healthy boundaries. You can call it whatever you want, but it is what it is. When a person gives too much, you can call it a big heart. That's kind of like a scapegoat for a lack of healthy boundaries. Oh, poor them, they just gave so much. They have a lot to learn. They have boundaries to set between self and other. And so understanding that repetition compulsion's drive, basically as like a massive safety defense mechanism, is to keep you comfortable and familiar inside of the same reinforcements. No, let's stay with the unhealthy relationships because it's comfortable and familiar. And I have this belief that's driving me, conditioning me to continue repeating the same patterns over and over again. And also, it's another like safety defense mechanism of the original wounded ego state with all its marring and scathing, to see the belief system and to be like, no, I clearly deserve to be treated like shit. So I'm going to continue to repeat that pattern of going out there and finding people that reinforce the original belief, the original wound. You can be healing. What are you choosing? Why are you choosing it? Are you choosing reinforcements of the original wound? Or, by the way, out of fear, are you choosing reinforcements of the original wound? You might be choosing reinforcements of the original wound because you're scared. you might have this belief of lack or of scarcity. You believe that you lack self-worth, and that's why you have to go out there to get it. And maybe that's why you're choosing reinforcements, because you fear this lack, you fear this scarcity, you believe, based on what you learned early on in childhood, that there's not a whole lot out there. So you have to settle and tolerate for unhealthy and toxic, fucked up, dysfunctional relationships. You can be healing while simultaneously choosing reinforcements of the original wound. But quite honestly, that's like, and no judgment, no shame, no guilt at all. You can do whatever you want to do. I'm just looking at everything for what it is. You can do that, but it's like, it's counterproductive to healing. Because to heal is to experience the opposite of what you previously experienced. So before I end off this video, I'll make it very clear that if what you previously experienced was this wound based on a lack of self-worth, and with that you were taught to go out there to try to seek the self-worth in different things and different people, then the opposite of that would be to cut those ties, to bring your power back to yourself, and to realize, oh wow, I actually determine my own self-worth. It's comfortable. And maybe you fear different realizations that you could come to. Maybe you're scared of your own anger. It's okay. There's no shame or guilt here. I am not judging anybody. I am simply looking at all of this for what it is. Because as I've said before, you either see it for what it is, or you're distracted by what it's not. If you see that your self-worth is actually intrinsic, you can externalize it all you want. But that's likely a reinforcement of the original wound, of self is only worthy if other approves, or self is only worthy if self achieves something out there. And not only that, let me explore something real quick before I end off this video. Have you ever felt like you've spent your entire life doing things because you thought you had to or you were supposed to? You don't actually want to. You're doing things as a means to an end. You're doing things to get things rather than doing things because you actually want to do them. What a fucking awakening it is to realize that you've spent your entire fucking life doing things because you were taught that you're supposed to do them. You were taught that you had to do them. You were taught that that's just the way that things are. No. I challenge the hell out of that. You know? Like, what if you grew up your entire life believing from a very early age that, oh, it's honorable to do this? Fuck that. What, based on great-great-grandfather, great-grandfather, grandfather, like, okay. This is just all passed down intergenerational fucked upness. What do you actually want? Why are you choosing what you're choosing? Are you aware that you might be choosing things based on comfort and familiarity of the original wound? Repetition, compulsion. Are you continuing to choose unhealthy relationships? Why are you? Is it comfortable and familiar? Yeah, probably. Are you aware that you can choose differently? Are you aware that you're allowed to choose differently? Are you also aware that you don't need my permission or anybody else's permission to choose differently, including the people that you think you need permission from? You don't need anybody else's permission. You get to choose this for yourself. Nobody else gets to tell you how to do it. And that's why setting healthy boundaries, individuating, differentiating, becoming an autonomous individual that is separate from the system that you came from is very important here. Yeah, you can be doing all the healing work that you want, but And it's not good or bad or right or wrong. It's just like, it's counterproductive. You could be doing all the healing work that you want, but if you're continuing to choose reinforcements of the original wound, why are you?